already?
Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up. Good morning.
um, okay, so we wanted to share our first couple experiences of taking the trailer out. To give a little backstory, the intention was we would have the trailer a long time ago so that when our house went up for sale, we could actually stay in the trailer the weekend that our house was up for sale. But as it worked out, the trailer came home the night before our house went up for sale. So it couldn't come to our house. We weren't prepared. Jason actually took it to locally to us, Vets Park, and stayed there, but all he had was electric hookup. And like I said, we didn't have any other stuff there and we weren't prepared. So he stayed there, slept on the couch. So there was that, and we visited, got the puppies kind of used to starting to go into it, and then since then it's been in our driveway, and go in it, get the puppies used to it, start planning things we want to do, cleaning it, although it came to us very clean, and then this past week we were able to take it out twice. This proportion is like really bother. You look really little and I look really big. So if I knew how to insert video within video, I would like, look at this video here, because when we first left our house to go to Lake Neshonoc in West Salem, which is about 20 minutes away from where we live, we weren't even a block away from our house, and we were questioning whether or not we were going to get stuck on some of the power lined wire things that hang down. And we did make it, but it was within inches. So that was our first experience. I got out and I got to direct traffic, and some people were smiling at me and some people were growling at me. And then you pulled out and I still had to back up and get myself situated. And I think we stopped at so I was in a separate car following Jason, and I think we had to stop at every red light. And so I never did follow them. We were never behind them the whole way. And by the time we got there, they were already inside checking in. So that was the start of that. And then we got there and did anybody stay? Did the boys stay with you? I hadn't stayed out. We stayed there for 2 nights.
Hey,
I actually didn't stay there. Belle didn't stay there because it was close to home and she worked and she had other obligations. So it was just easier to come home for those things. But we wanted to test out, the full water hookups, and electric and the sewer stuff. So we did some of that.
We did.
You did some of that.
Our first experience at Neshonoc was actually overall really good. Check-in went really well.
And then backing in.
Yeah, so that was probably the hardest part of all of Neshonoc. The lady was like super excited. She's like, "Oh yeah, you'll just pull up here and you'll back right in." It didn't work that way. So we were backing in, and I have no doubt we would have gotten it eventually, but a gentleman was riding around on his bike and said, "Hey, do you mind if I help give you instructions?" And so we said, "Sure, that's fine." And so he gave me instructions on when to turn, how to turn, and it took.
Well, that's like a huge no is you don't help somebody back in their camper because everybody's so, I know this is my rig and I know it and I don't want help and yada yada. So that's kind of the experience that we've read about. But we were so glad that he helped, because I don't know how to help back in a trailer. Ethan has helped somewhat, but it was, first of all, Neshonoc back there was really pretty. I'd never been back there, even though I grew up fairly close to it, but it's kind of on hills. So backing in, the road to back in here, and there was another camper here, but there was a hill right in front of the road where you had to back in, and then we had to back up a hill. So it was kind of a valley.
And it was offset, too. It wasn't like just straight backing in. It was.
And you said you couldn't see out your mirrors.
You can't see out your mirrors.
So I didn't know what I was doing, and he needed help with what he was doing. And so I was very glad. And that guy was really good.
Yeah, he did a great job.
He wasn't condescending at all. Nope. He was very helpful.
He helped out a lot. So we got it hooked up. And Ethan and Emmett and I stayed, and I think primarily because there was a pool. The boys were super excited about that. So we swam, we went down to the lake. Ethan had purchased a paddleboard, I don't know, maybe a couple of days before, a week before. And so we took that out on the lake on the second day we were there, actually, and Belle and you came back for that, and Owen. And so overall, it was a nice experience. We had full hookup. We didn't really use our hookups that much, though.
So the water went well. This was the first time water was hooked up, and then also had to empty the tanks.
Well, it went well, but so we had purchased a really highly recommended hose. And I had actually gone up. It was a weekend holiday when I went up to purchase it at one of our local RV shops, and brought it back. And when I hooked it up, it immediately leaked. So I called them, and they said, "Sure, bring it back." So I took it back, got another one, brought that one back, and hooked it up, and it immediately leaked. So I called them again, like, okay. And I think they were kind of doubting me, but they leaked. We got a third one, and that one leaked too. And so finally I just ended up returning it, which was a whole nother hassle because it was on the weekend again. And the guy didn't know how to do returns because he was kind of the repair guy, not the sales guy. But anyway, so that was kind of interesting.
Also, emptying the tanks. That's a new experience for us. And there was something about the valve on the black tank, which is the water that comes down from your toilet. Before things got hooked up, when we opened the cap, stuff had started to come out, and that's not supposed to happen. So did you figure out what needed to be fixed with that?
I think it was just from bouncing along the road.
Okay.
So now I just take a tub and have it underneath the so that doesn't spill it on the ground. It'll just spill it into the tub, and then I can empty the tub and rinse it and clean it, whatever.
Yeah, so we started to... Jason's doing most of this. I'm kind of learning as I'm doing also other things, but you rinse the black tanks where the water comes from your toilets, and then after that you rinse your gray tank, which is water from like your shower and your sinks. And then you rinse them to make sure they're all clean. We didn't get to we did use the outside kitchen, but it's so, even just on flat ground, it's so tall. So it's like up to here on me. And so when we cooked later, Belle was actually standing on a stool, which worked well. I don't know if it's the safest thing to be.
That was actually not at Neshonic, that one, but yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't figure out actually how to light it's all gas. I wanted to use the inside stove and oven, but it was also hot. I knew it would heat it up, but there's something with the pilot light that has to be lit. So we weren't able to do that yet. We haven't got that far. And we didn't get to try out the electric fireplace. Also, just kind of, we didn't want to turn it on because it was hot. But back to the outside kitchen, it has a refrigerator, a sink, and then 3 burners, but it's gas, and I'm used to electric. You just turn on it and it goes, but it didn't. So there's still a trick there that I haven't figured out. The lighter
Pizio I haven't figured out. It's supposed to have automatic lighting, so I've just been using trigger lighters,
and that just scares me.
So you got nonsense going on with the pups.
But yeah, like setting up, leveling. I'll shut that door. That all went well. And then coming home and parking went well.
So then 2 days later?
Yeah.
2 days later, we decided to take another trip out. And that trip happened to be to a different campground about 15 or 20 minutes away. And that trip was a little bit more interesting, so to speak. We had been through the campground one time. We were looking at a piece of property that we ended up not buying, but anyway, it's a gated scenario, and so we had to stop and check in and get the keys to the gate and all that kind of stuff, which was interesting. And we drove through, and it was
the check-in lady was interesting.
Check-in lady was very interesting. We drove through, and again, everybody was super excited. This was a pull-through, so it was supposed to be super easy, no backing.
I thought pull-through meant easy.
Not so much. So as we pulled up to the campsites, I looked, and I'm like, man, this is really narrow. And it was. The campsite was really, really small. So I pulled on.
It's fairly flat in terms of just like
no
looking
hills,
at
no
things.
hills or anything.
It's pretty flat.
So I pulled in, And I got out and looked, and I just didn't like where my jacks were going to have to come down. Some of them were going to be partially on the gravel, partially not on the gravel. So I actually ended up pulling back out, and then I pulled around again, and they had put us right next to somebody, which actually will turn out to be a really good thing here in a minute. So as I pulled in again, I felt a little bit better about it. We unhooked. We had a little bit of a problem because while most of it was flat, as the campsite reached the road, it went up a little bit. So the truck now, the front end was higher than the back end, and getting the fifth wheel unhitched was really, really difficult. But we did. We got it unhitched and pulled it forward and hit the auto level, and the auto level was like, don't like this. It turned out that where we were parked was not level from side to side. That's probably one of the more important things when you're camping is to make sure you're level side to side. So we knew that was going to be an issue. So we hooked the truck back up, pulled it forward a little bit, got a little bit. We actually used a board at first to level it, but then it was still so much off that the tires were off the ground, which is not a thing you want to do. Typically with your RVs, you want to have those tires supported. So we pulled forward a little bit, trying to find a spot, backed it up a little bit, back and forth and back and forth. And we could not get this thing level. As a matter of fact, Amanda eventually took the puppies and Emmett and Annabelle and Owen and went back home.
Went home. It was like 90 degrees, and there was no shade there. And because we had the puppies, like I couldn't just go take them to the pool or something. And we weren't that far away from home, and it was getting to be 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hadn't fed them lunch because the intention was we were going to eat at the campground. So I was going to take them to go get something to eat, and then I figured, well, why go buy something? Why don't we just go home? The puppies can be home and run around the backyard and have space. Everybody just chilled. But yeah, we walked around, we hung around, we tried to stay out of the way, we tried to help, we got back in the car, turned the air conditioning on, and finally we just said, we'll just go home. So we came home for well over an hour. So I think that whole leveling thing took over 2 to maybe 3 hours.
Yeah, it probably was close to 3 hours. At some point, after an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, the gentleman from next door came over, a younger guy, and said, hey, is it going okay? And I said, no, I can't get it level front to back without having my axles off the ground. And so he said, well, I've been full-timing for 3 years. Would you mind if I helped you? I said, no, thank you. So we tried a few things, and we still had problems with getting the truck unhooked, and just had more issues. And he said, well, let's try this. And he brought over these Anderson leveling pucks. They're about this big around and about that tall, and I had wanted some, but they were $50 a piece is the cheapest I found them, and sometimes they're as much as $75 a piece. And he was like, well, here, let's try these. You'll add more stability to your trailer. You'll feel better about it. And I asked him right away, I'm like, well, when are you leaving? He goes, we're leaving tomorrow. I said, well, we're not leaving for a couple of days. He goes, that's fine. You can have them.
Because they'd be stuck under our trailer.
They'd be stuck under our trailer.
And some of these things are on Jason's wish list, but we just haven't been able to go buy it all at one time.
So anyway, even with those, we were really struggling to get it to level out. So the site was not level front to back at all. It was fine left to right-ish, fine-ish, left to right, but front to back it was absolutely awful. And so we ended up getting to the end of our stroke on the back jacks, which means they couldn't go up any higher, and it still wasn't quite level. So we had to pull them down again, put more. It was like I said, about a 3-hour process to get this thing.
Pull through doesn't mean easier.
Pull through does not mean easier.
It's supposed to be easier.
And in the end, the wheels were still off the ground, and we jacked them up from underneath with more blocks. So we're going to have to get more blocks at some point because we don't have enough right now. But in hindsight, it was funny because the next morning he was out getting his camper ready, and I went out to say hi to him and talk to him a little bit. And he said, I said, I was thinking about this last night while I was sleeping, while I was in bed. He goes, I was too.
I heard that conversation.
So we both were thinking of different ways that we could have maybe, helped that out a little bit more. And so I think, in the future, if I know that we're that far out of level, I have some ideas of what to do. So that was good too. And again, the whole point is to figure out, what you're going to do when things maybe don't go the way you want them to, or maybe just to try and find things.
This is one of the reasons I knew that people say, why don't you rent an RV and try this? I knew things would go wrong, and it's a lot of work. And even just the whole going for a couple days and coming home, all these people camp do this and take stuff back and forth. It's exhausting. So I knew we had to go all in. And right now it's not a matter of quitting, it's just a matter of figuring things out. So then leveled, we came back, chilled for the night. We actually all stayed in the trailer. One night, and then it went pretty good. The puppies did really well until like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they were just hyper as heck and all over the place.
I slept there.
So it's different, like when they get up in the morning and, we just let them out back. Now we have to get up, take them out, be quiet in a campground. We were fairly close to the dog park, which was nice, and no other dogs were usually in there, so they got to run over there. The campground itself, I might make separate videos, just real brief, kind of sharing about the videos, but we were very close to the people, and so like our picnic table was like 6 feet away from the neighbor's septic the sewer area, so it wasn't really attractive. There were actually like half the campground where we were was about empty, so had, in hindsight, although the person did help Jason, like I would have liked to have more space just between us.
And we could have parked in a lot of different spots. I mean, they were open.
Yeah, but the rest of the campground, I think a lot of it seasonal, was pretty full. But also, after the second night, a lot of those people did leave, so we did have more space. But yeah, nothing. Normal day, swimming. They have a man-made pond out there where they have all those inflatable water things.
It was a lot of fun. It was
and
actually
a nice beach.
Really fun.
So the kids got to do that. The campground itself, Nishonik was kind of, they have a pool and they do have the big lake. It was kind of a calm area, and Champions is kind of a big frills, laser tag and the video game arcade and a big pillow bouncy thing and goats and inflatables and
a lot going on.
But a lot of it wasn't operational. Like they didn't have a lot of it accessible to us, so I don't know if they only do that. We stayed a Sunday through a Tuesday, something like that. So maybe they do that more on weekends or whatever. That's little less of my style, even though I like frills and I like fluff, and it tends to make things busier and messier, and I like the calm and the clean. So that night it was fun. We played games like as a family, some of those things I'm excited to be able to spend time with. Everybody got rotated through the shower. The water stayed warm until I got into the shower trying to adjust the water temperature to get it right, and I was told you need to shut off the water.
So, to back up just a little, not having done a lot of this before, I was keeping an eye on our black and gray tanks to see how full they were.
There's sensors.
There's sensors. They're not always accurate, but they're at least an idea, of where you might be. And so I had seen that one of our gray tanks was almost full, so I went and emptied it. And one of our blacks was almost full, so I emptied that. And in my pressing of buttons, because there's lots of different buttons, it said the freshwater tank was full. And I didn't think anything of that, because when you're hooked up to city water, your water should not be going into your freshwater tank. So there shouldn't be anything there. It should just be supplying everything.
So your freshwater tank is a tank that you can fill up when you need it, when you're not hooked up to things. But if you're hooked up to, like at the campground, you're hooked up to the city water, it should just bypass the tank. It doesn't fill up the tank and come out of the tank. It just bypasses
the tank altogether. So anyway, I didn't really think too much of it. And then Amanda was going to get ready to shower. We had just finished up some games, and Ethan and I were going to take the dogs for a walk. So we step outside, and immediately I hear water. Interesting.
This is probably like 10:30 at night.
So I look, and there's a stream of water coming out from under the underbelly. What the heck? I mean, it wasn't like a huge stream. It was just a little, it was steady, but it was a small stream.
There shouldn't be water.
But there shouldn't be water. And the underbelly was sagging, and had actually, at one of the seams, there's tape that keeps the seams together, and it actually had come apart, so it was hanging down. So I got a flashlight, crawled underneath, took a look. Sure enough, there was water. Moved some stuff around from what I could reach, kept looking further and further, and you could see it was coming from up in front. Tore a panel off so we could see if we could get, to where the leak was. There was no leak behind the panel, so immediately shut off all the water. Amanda didn't get her shower, and made sure everything was empty. And then I said, well, the freshwater tank shouldn't have anything in it. So I pulled the freshwater tank.
You didn't say that. You need to give credit to who said that.
Who?
Annabelle said that.
Annabelle said it? All right, Annabelle said it. I don't know. Somebody said, anyway, I pulled the freshwater tank, and sure enough, there was water coming out. So I shut it real quick, got a hose, because our freshwater tank drain is like this big around. It's like not a small, it's a big, pipe. So I got another hose to drain that out into the waste. And so I pulled that.
It is all clean water, though.
It is all clean water.
It's basically just
it's all
water
clean
from
water.
the source. So that was good.
So I pulled that, drained it. And as that started to drain, the water stopped dripping. So had to do a little research. Still don't know 100% for sure.
Can't be making a ton of noise at night because it's approaching 11 o'clock at night in the campground. And even though it's less busy, there's still people there.
Yeah. So anyway, I did a little bit of research. I think we know what the issue is, but because we don't have hookups at home, it's very difficult to test that theory. So I don't know, we may have to next week or the following week have to get this somewhere where we can test some of it. But I'm going to actually pull the underbelly down, look to make sure there's a couple of things that it could be. It could be a leaking pipe, where the fresh water fills in, or it could be just as simple as there's usually a vent on top of the tank so that water will flow out, because you can't just keep that pressurized, kind of like your gas can where you have the vent at the back and you pour it out that way. So it could be as simple as that, and that once the tank was full, it started to come out the vent, and then it ran down into the underbelly. So there's some simple things that it could be. There's some more complicated things that it could be. It could be part of the water pump system for when you're using the freshwater tanks and not using the city water. So there's some investigation to do.
So something needs to either be adjusted or fixed, but it looks like no damage was done.
Yeah.
Because water can take a trailer down, like if water gets in the floor or the roof or the ceiling, but the underbelly is actually just this big piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And so it didn't hurt that to get wet. Yeah. So it's 11 o'clock at night, and we shut the water off, and we started to think about it, and I said, I'm going to take the kids home. Do you want to go home? And it was weird. It was kind of felt like we were like fleeing in a sense, like just grab this quick. And the reason we decided to go home is even though it was a campground and there were bathrooms and we absolutely could have stayed there, and in the future if something happens we will have to stay in our trailer, but we came home because we could. We were only 20 minutes away. The closest bathroom to us was...
Well, there was an outhouse.
There was, a porta potty, and it's by all the dumpsters, which smelled really bad, but to get any actual water... we had to have trekked quite far across. Because they didn't need to have bathrooms in our area because everybody was on full hookups, so they were using their own bathrooms. So that just made it easier. So we came home. Owen is not as excited as some to go on this adventure because he's a homebody and change is a little bit more nerve-wracking to him. And so I said, we're going home, and I turned around and he had his pillow and his toothbrush and okay, let's go. It was funny. He was already homesick, so that was kind of cute for him. So then came home, and then Jason stayed there that night and then worked on it a little bit in the morning, and then Emmett and I went back and help clean up, pack up, right?
Help clean up, pack up, yep.
We had to flush the black tanks a few times.
We still weren't able to get the one to flush with the hookup.
Black tank or gray tank?
Black tank.
You had to take full buckets of water inside and force the pressure to go out, down.
Which coincidentally, that black tank always said it was 100% full. And after we did that flush, it said it was only 3/4 full. So I'm wondering if the sensor is getting cleaned by, some of that flushing. It just needs a better clean out. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw some ice down there next time we move it. A lot of the places say if you throw ice down into your toilet, into your black tank, the chunks, like, work it around as you're traveling, and then, of course, it melts, and you can just empty it out. So that could be a way to hopefully maybe get that fixed up a little bit better. But then, the big oops.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we were having problems, obviously, with everything at that point. The black tank wouldn't flush. We were hauling 5-gallon buckets of water inside and, washing them down. And I could definitely see a shine of light down in there. You can see in there was definitely crud, which we hadn't used that bathroom that much. I think the front end bathroom got used more than the back end bathroom. So I think it was
some
left over from us. But at any rate, we were getting ready to pull the jacks up, and we have JT strong arm stabilizers on our jacks as well, and they are tightened down by a T.
They
screw.
come down from the front and back.
Yep.
Just to help
stabilize left to right movements. Yep. And I did not remember to unscrew the bolts. So the electric motors were strong enough; they pulled everything all the way up. And then the front one started to come up, and I realized what was happening, and I aborted the retract all as fast as I could, and we loosened the front bolts, and then hit auto retract again. So then those were coming up, and that was fine. And I went and looked at the back, and sure enough, it actually taken the jack stand and twisted the internal cylinder 90 degrees on both sides. So I don't know what that's going to mean for me. It could mean a couple of things. The jacks still work, which is good. I'm not sure they're working exactly like they should. But I'm pretty sure the JT Armstrongs on the back are shot. So I'm going to have to take those off. If those are shot, from what I found, I can't find anything but buying the whole set. I'm going to have to buy a whole set and have extras, I guess. And that's, I don't know, what did I say, $350, something like that, if we decide to put them on. You don't need them, but they're nice to have. Especially with 4 kids in the back, I think it's going to be important to have it. If I have to replace the ground control jacks, which are on auto level, those are like $600 a piece. So, yeah, not a great deal. Hopefully, I'm going to tear into that, both the underbelly and the jack systems here in the next week or so, because we're getting down there. We only have 3 weeks until we leave. 3 weeks-ish. So, yeah, we're getting right down there. So we have to get some of these fixes taken care of. But it's better that we learned it while we're here rather than while we're on the road somewhere and maybe don't have access. Here, at least I have two different RV supply places that I can choose from. We have e-trailer, which can ship to our house or to our in-laws, whatever we decide is going to be most convenient. If you're on the road, you don't know what you're going to have. So I have a lot more tools here that I'll be able to take with me. It makes me sad. It'll be fine. So there are ways to work on this, and I'm learning things, and it's a process for sure. But
things need to be done calmly. You need to know. Everybody needs to know, and I think people that RV for a long time understand like patience for everybody else. Some people that are newer or don't do it quite as much maybe aren't quite as patient. No. But as you go through more of these things, you learn to be more patient with yourself and calm and relaxed to do the things correctly. So that's where we're at. So now some fixes. Like I said, 3 weeks from now, we hit the road. We're going to make it a whole grand 1.5 to 2 hours north on our first trip. It's going to be awesome. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Anything else, pal?